What if I told you that the modern nation of Iran plays a crucial role in the Bible's grand narrative of prophecy and world events? While many people tend to focus on Israel, Egypt and Babylon when they think of the Bible, what if I told you that Iran, known as Persia in biblical times, wasn't just another empire, but a nation specifically mentioned in prophecy to shape the future of God's chosen people? Iran's biblical origin story is far more fascinating than you might think. From Noah's descendants to the reign of Cyrus the Great, the history of the Iranian people is intricately tied to some of the most pivotal moments in the Bible. The truly shocking revelation is that God used Persia, a nation of pagan kings, to deliver Israel, rebuild the temple, and fulfill prophecies spoken centuries before they came to pass. In this video, we'll explore how the Bible uncovers the origins of the Iranian people, their rise to power, and their crucial role in shaping both the Old Testament and prophetic visions of the future. Buckle up, because what you're about to learn will completely change your perspective on Iran, not just as a modern-day nation, but as a central player in God's unfolding plan for the world. To understand Iran's biblical roots, we must go back to the story of Noah and his descendants. After the Great Flood, Noah's 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, became the ancestors of all the nations on earth, according to Genesis 10's Table of Nations. One of Japheth's sons, Madai, became the forefather of the Medes. The Medes would later join forces with the Persians, forming the Medo-Persian Empire. Madai's descendants, the Medes, settled in what is now modern-day Iran, and the Persians, emerging from the same geographical area, later rose to power. Both groups shared a common Iranian ancestry. Thus, according to the Bible, the Iranian people trace their lineage back to Japheth through Madai, which places them within the biblical narrative from the very beginning of post-flood history. This connection links the Iranians to one of the Bible's oldest genealogies, setting the stage for their key role in the history of God's people. Centuries later, Persia rose to prominence as a kingdom central to the biblical story. The Medes and Persians formed an alliance under the leadership of Cyrus the Great, who founded the Achaemenid Empire, also known as the First Persian Empire. At its height, this empire stretched from the Indus River to North Africa, encompassing regions mentioned in the Bible, including Israel, Babylon, and Egypt. Yet Persia's significance goes beyond its military and territorial strength. What truly matters is how God used Persia to fulfill his promises to the Israelites. The Babylonian Empire, led by King Nebuchadnezzar, had conquered Jerusalem in 586 BC, destroyed the temple, and exiled the people of Judah. The Israelites stayed in Babylonian captivity for 70 years, just as the prophet Jeremiah had foretold. Then came Cyrus the Great, the Persian king who conquered Babylon in 539 BC, and everything changed. The book of Ezra opens with a decree from Cyrus, allowing the Israelites to return to their land and rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. Ezra 1:2-4 records Cyrus declaring, "The Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth and has appointed me to build a temple for him at Jerusalem in Judah." Cyrus, a pagan king, had been named by the prophet Isaiah over a century earlier as the one who would carry out God's will to restore Israel. Isaiah 44:28, 45:1. In one of the most astounding moments in biblical history, Persia, a nation outside God's covenant, became the instrument of God's redemption for his people. This marked a major turning point for Israel, highlighting Persia's pivotal role in God's divine plan. A remarkable part of Persia's biblical legacy is Cyrus the Great's role. In Isaiah 44:28, God refers to Cyrus by name more than 150 years before he was born, calling him his shepherd who will fulfill his purposes. In Isaiah 45:1, Cyrus is even called God's anointed, a title typically reserved for the kings of Israel. How could a foreign pagan king be called God's anointed? The answer lies in God's sovereignty and his ability to use anyone, even those outside his covenant, to accomplish his will. Cyrus's decree to allow the Jews to return and rebuild the temple wasn't just a political move, it was a prophetic fulfillment. The prophet Jeremiah had foretold the 70-year Babylonian captivity, Jeremiah 25:11 through 12, 29:10, and Cyrus's rise to power marked the end of that period. The rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem under Zerubbabel's leadership with Cyrus's blessing was a crucial step in the restoration of Israel. God used Persia not only to defeat Babylon, the empire that had oppressed Israel, but also to facilitate Israel's rebirth as a nation. This reminded Israel and the world that God's plan is far greater than any empire, and that he can use even the most unlikely figures to bring about his purposes. Persia's role in biblical history doesn't end with Cyrus and the rebuilding of the temple. The book of Esther gives another powerful example of how Persia was used by God to protect his people during the reign of King Xerxes I, also known as Ahasuerus. A plot was hatched by Haman, a high-ranking official in the Persian court, to exterminate the Jews living in the empire. Haman's hatred for the Jews led him to manipulate the king into issuing a decree that would allow for their annihilation. But through God's providence, a young Jewish woman named Esther became queen of Persia. Encouraged by her uncle Mordecai, Esther took a bold step by approaching the king, revealing her Jewish identity and pleading for her people's survival. Esther 4:14 records Mordecai's famous words, "Who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this?" Esther's intervention led to a dramatic reversal. King Xerxes, upon learning of Haman's treachery, ordered his execution and issued a new decree allowing the Jews to defend themselves. This story, recorded in the book of Esther, is celebrated annually during the Jewish festival of Purim, as a reminder of how God used Persia, and particularly Queen Esther, to preserve his people. The story of Esther is one of divine providence and protection, once again showing how Persia, though a foreign empire, became an instrument through which God's people were saved. God's hand was evident throughout, using Persia as the backdrop for this miraculous deliverance of the Jews. Persia wasn't just a passive observer of God's plan, it played an active role in ensuring the survival of Israel, a nation destined to bring forth the Messiah. The Bible not only speaks of Persia's historical role, but also places it at the center of prophetic visions about the future of world empires and God's ultimate plan for humanity. One of the most striking examples of this can be found in the book of Daniel. Daniel, a Jewish prophet who lived during the Babylonian exile, served in the courts of both the Babylonian and Persian empires. In the book of Daniel, we see several visions revealing the rise and fall of empires, including Persia. In Daniel 2, King Nebuchadnezzar dreams of a great statue made of various materials, each representing a world empire. The silver chest and arms of the statue represent the Medo-Persian Empire, which would replace Babylon as the dominant power. Later in Daniel 7, Daniel himself has a vision of 4 beasts, representing 4 successive empires. The second beast, a bear raised up on one side, symbolizes the Medo-Persian Empire, emphasizing its dual nature and vast strength, especially under Cyrus, which forever altered the course of history. Another significant vision of Persia is found in Daniel 8, where the prophet sees a ram with two horns, one representing the Medes and the other the Persians, charging in all directions and conquering vast territories. However, the vision also includes a goat with a prominent horn, symbolizing Greece and its king, Alexander the Great, who would eventually conquer the Persian Empire. These visions place Persia at the heart of God's prophetic timeline, demonstrating that the rise and fall of empires, including Persia, were part of God's ultimate plan. Persia's influence in history, though marked by its eventual decline, is an essential part of God's divine plan. The time of Persia's dominance was foreseen in prophecy, paving the way for the rise of Greece. It was during Persia's reign that God's people experienced deliverance and restoration, fulfilling the prophecies of Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel. Though the Persian Empire fell to Alexander the Great in the 4th century BC, its impact persisted through the New Testament era. By the time of Jesus' birth, Persia had been succeeded by the Greek and Roman empires. Yet, the legacy of Persian culture, governance, and administration left a lasting imprint on the ancient world. One of the more intriguing connections between Persia and the New Testament is the story of the Magi, the wise men who visited the infant Jesus, as recounted in Matthew 2. Many scholars believe the Magi came from Persia and may have been Zoroastrian priests, part of a religious tradition that practiced astrology and the interpretation of omens. Their journey to honor the newborn king of the Jews underscores Persia's ongoing connection to the biblical narrative. Even after the fall of the empire, the wisdom traditions of Persia continued to influence the ancient Near East, with Persian scholars recognizing the star that heralded Jesus' birth. Moreover, Persia's legacy of tolerance toward various cultures and religions laid the foundation for the spread of Judaism and eventually Christianity throughout the Roman Empire. The Persian Empire was notable for permitting its subjects to maintain their religious practices, a policy that influenced future empires, including Rome. This environment of religious freedom allowed Jewish communities to thrive in the region and set the stage for the gospel's spread. As we conclude this exploration of Persia's role in the Bible, it's vital to consider the future of Iran in the light of biblical prophecy. Many scholars and theologians believe that Iran, historically known as Persia, will play a significant role in the events of the end times. One of the most notable prophecies concerning Persia is found in Ezekiel 38-39, where the prophet speaks of a coalition of nations that will one day rise up against Israel in the last days. Among these nations is Persia, which will join forces with Gog of Magog and others in a massive battle called the War of Gog and Magog. This prophecy, often viewed as a future event, depicts a final clash between the forces of evil and God's people, with Israel at the heart of the conflict. Although the specifics of this war and its timing are debated, the inclusion of Persia, modern-day Iran, suggests that its influence will continue to hold spiritual significance in the end times. Furthermore, Daniel's prophecies about the rise and fall of empires, including Persia, emphasize a broader theme: God's sovereignty over all nations. Persia's role in biblical prophecy reveals that no empire, no matter how powerful, is beyond God's control. He raises up nations and brings them down, all according to his divine plan. As we observe current events in the Middle East, including tensions between Iran and Israel, we must remember that these events are part of a much grander narrative, a story that began in the Bible and will culminate in the fulfillment of God's promises. The story of Persia and its modern-day counterpart Iran serves as one of the most striking examples of how God can use even unlikely nations to accomplish his divine purposes. From the descendants of Japheth through Madai to the rise of Cyrus the Great, Persia played a pivotal role in biblical history, from the restoration of Israel to the protection of the Jewish people in the Book of Esther. However, Persia's significance extends beyond its historical role. The prophecies of Daniel, Isaiah, and Ezekiel remind us that Persia was not only part of God's plan for the nations of the past, but also for the future. Iran's place in biblical prophecy signals its ongoing role in the unfolding events leading to the end times. As we reflect on the modern world, particularly the tensions between Iran and Israel, it's crucial to approach these events with a biblical perspective. God's sovereignty over all nations means that every kingdom, empire, and leader is part of his divine plan. The story of Persia serves as a testament to how God can use even foreign powers to fulfill his promises and bring about his ultimate plan for salvation. Persia, now Iran, continues to play a significant role on the world stage, and its biblical connection reminds us that history is more than just the rise and fall of empires. It is the unfolding of God's plan for the redemption of his people and the world.